All right, so we're back. Thanks for everybody who's following along with us today on this free clinic. It's been great. Right now, we've got Coach Alan Rudolph. Had the opportunity to meet Coach Rudolph through Twitter, and man, it's such an outstanding thing that you were able to come here and volunteer. I'm going to shut up, Coach, because I'll talk to you all day long. Like that won't be an issue. But yeah, run with it, and we'll get questions and field it as they go, and we'll get going from there. All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Coach. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in it. I got a couple things I want to kind of hit before we get into what we got to really talk about, the meat and potatoes. But first off, always hashtag glorify Him, and that Him is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That'll be something that I think is very important. Coach, I want to thank you for this opportunity to share some thoughts and some things with guys. To grow this great game that we have an opportunity, and we've been privileged to work with young men of all ages. Also, like to take a minute to thank Coach Solich. Frank Solich is our head coach here at Ohio U. Unbelievable head coach, has taught me so much in my 2 years here, and forever grateful to him. And hope he keeps me around for a long time. And then our offensive coordinator by the name of Tim Albin is an absolute rock star. If you get an opportunity to follow him on Twitter or whatever, he does a fantastic job with our running backs, and he also coordinates our offense and just does some really, really neat things, and wanted to make sure that I gave him a shout out. I also want to thank the guys that are taking time out of their day to learn, to grow, to help the young men that they have an opportunity to work with. I think this is the greatest profession / hobby in the world, and I call it a hobby because I don't golf. I don't do things that other people do. What I do is watch film when I have time away. So it becomes a hobby, but the teaching and training of the future of America is so big. That statement that I just made is so heavy. And I want to thank you guys because you are training the leaders of our country for tomorrow. And I don't want to pass on that at any point, because I think that's the most important thing that we do. And then the last thing I want to say, and this one may take me a little bit of time, my dad, Steve Rudolph, is the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. But I think we can all learn some great lessons from him. If he sat down and tried to talk inside zone with you, he wouldn't be able to. The game has kind of passed him by. He was a high school coach in the state of Mississippi for 45 or 46 years. Was a head coach several years, but that wasn't who he was. Football was important to him, but people were the most important. People were the most important. There is no doubt my father wanted to win, but he wanted to use the game to grow and build into the lives of the young men that God blessed him to be a part of. So today we're going to talk about fundamentals, and we're going to talk about the drive block, but all of that is important. But the biggest fundamental that we're going to talk about today, the biggest scheme we're going to talk about, the greatest win we're going to have today, we can have as a coach, is to build into the young men that we have and help them become better people, better future husbands, better future fathers, better future employees, or better future bosses, better students today and tomorrow, better friends, better boyfriends, men that respect adults and authority, men that respect women, men that respect their parents, and the gifts and talents that God has blessed them with. If y'all don't think, when we're done today, if you only remember one thing, we are blessed to truly help develop young men as a person. And we're going to talk about how we develop guys fundamentally. how fundamentals, what we're going to talk about today, transcends really all ages, all skill levels, and really all offenses, whether it's option, whether it's wing T, whether it's pro style, more zone driven in what you do. We're going to talk about some fundamentals that kind of transcend all of those things. But I would be remiss if I didn't take 5 minutes to point out that the biggest fundamental, the biggest scheme, the biggest win is that we get an opportunity to pour ourselves into the young men that we're truly blessed by God to work with. So I'm gonna jump into and what we're going to cover today are the fundamentals versus technique. And when I say fundamentals, there's going to be 5 things that I think that I really stress to our guys that really are football fundamentals. They're not just offensive line fundamentals. They're football fundamentals. They can transcend positionally. And I've already talked about they can transcend age, they can transcend skill development, and they can transcend no matter what type of offense that you're involved in or that you run. The first one are the steps that you take and how you teach your young men to take steps. And to do that, I'm sorry, it rolled through there. The second thing is the base, the platform, the blocking platform that you teach a young man to have. The third thing is playing with their hips under them, and we'll go in great detail about that. The fourth thing is how they strike with their hands. I think that's a huge fundamental. And then the fifth thing we're going to talk about is playing with their eyes through the landmark. One of the big things that I want to stress is always see what you contact. Just for player safety, if they will run their eyes through the landmark that you're teaching them, and they will look contact in, that will keep their spine in as safe a position as it can possibly be. And I can't overstate that fundamental within itself. And we'll talk about the 3 points of contact. But I always tell my guys, hey, I want to win football games, and I want to develop you, and I want to teach you to be a better football player. But at the end of the day, 15 years from now, I want you to call me and you've just gotten out of your backyard throwing a football with your son, or throwing a softball with your daughter, or out roller skating with them, or something of that nature. So player safety has to be of utmost importance. And I've found if you will look contact through, you're going to keep yourself in as safe as possible position as you can. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into steps. Okay. And no matter what position you play, I think you have to be able to move efficiently with the steps that you take. So therefore, I teach a thing called mental weight. A lot of you've probably heard that. It's something, it's not a groundbreaking thing, but we want to load the foot up, the opposite foot of the one that we're stepping with, and we want to make that foot heavy so that when we step, we do not have false steps, or we do not have false weight shifts. Okay, and the way that we do this, if you look right here, and Coach, I hope you can see what I'm circling right there, but we've got a foot and we got a big toe that's curled up right there. So the foot, if I'm stepping to my left, okay, I want to curl the big toe in my right foot as I'm in my stance. Okay, my weight should be balanced between my feet. Okay, and if I want to step with my left foot, I want to take, and if this is my big toe, I just want to curl that big toe, and that should put heaviness and weight in my my right foot, so that I can efficiently step with my left foot, no matter what step that is. no matter if it's a power step, if it's a bucket step, if it's an angle bucket step, if it's a load step, okay, no matter what that step is, I want to load the opposite foot with weight from the one I'm stepping with. So if I'm stepping left, I want to curl the big toe in my right foot. If I'm stepping to my right, I want to curl the big toe in my left foot. And if you just put your feet flat on the floor right now, and if you want it, just curl your right toe, you'll feel that foot got really heavy. And now I can most efficiently step with my left foot without false steps or without false weight shifts. As I watch film, I see a ton of false steps. You watch my guys, you're going to see a ton of false steps as well. But I see more false weight shifts where a guy is kind of balanced, and as the ball is snapped, he actually shifts his weight one side or the other to load that foot up in order to step with the opposite foot. And I want to clean that up, make them more efficient, clean that up, take that out of the game. Okay. So the first thing we do when we talk about steps is we want to create mental weight in our stance. Okay. The second thing, when we talk about steps, we're talking about the 2 steps of whatever block that we're performing to the fit. Okay. We want to focus on those 2 steps. We want to gain ground, okay, in the direction, and then we want to get the second step landing where we want it to land. So no matter what block that we're performing, I think if you're talking about a fullback, you want him to be efficient in those first 2 steps, because if he is not efficient and effective in those first 2 steps, his base could be crossed over right away. He could be stepping underneath himself with the first step, which means he's on a narrow platform or he's becoming straight leg. So we really focus on those first 2 steps, no matter what block we're performing. The third thing we talk about is tight feet. We want tight feet to the ground, no air. And I'm going to show you a great picture of this here in just a minute, okay? We want to minimize the time that we're on one foot, that we have one foot in the ground. We want to minimize that time. Therefore, we're keeping the second foot that is actually moving to take a step. We're keeping it as close and as tight to the ground as we possibly can. And now you'll see we never want to have 2 feet in the air. I don't care how much he squats, how much he power cleans. If both feet are in the air, he is not strong. He cannot control his body, and he is at the mercy of the defender. And I want to show you a picture real quick of this is just the Ravens, and I took a quick snapshot. But if you look, okay, all of their guys, just when I took the snapshot, okay, you can see that's 1 foot in the air right there. Now they are moving, they are rolling off the football. There's another foot in the air right there, okay? We've got both feet in the ground right here, both feet in the ground right here, both feet in the ground right there. You can just see, I think this illustrates how important it is to play with both feet in the ground and minimize the time that foot has very little air under it. So when I say no air, tight feet to the ground, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And then the fourth thing when we talk about steps is our head must mirror the step, okay? And we could go in great detail, and I could spend all 45 minutes that I have on just that concept itself. But if I take a 4 to 6 inch step laterally and my head is going forward, okay, and it's not mirroring that step, then I'm in effect not going to go where that foot's going to go. My body's going to follow my head, okay? So if I want to take a 4 to 6 inch lateral step and I want to achieve landmark on that 4 to 6 inch step, then I must mirror that step with my head. So if it goes 4 to 6 inches laterally, hey, troubleshoot your guys and make sure their head is going 4 to 6 inches laterally, because 2 things will happen. 1, they won't ever achieve their landmark that's desired. And 2, they will be straight legged, okay, because that head's going to start leaking forward before the body is ready for them to go. So those are the big things that we look at stepwise. And guys, we start off like this every day. Okay, we'll talk about the first thing we do in kind of our drill progression, but really the second thing we're going to do is a step drill every day, and we're going to work the most prominent steps that we have to take fundamentally, and all we're focused on here is the 2 steps. Now here we're working a drive block. This is a left guard. This is a 3 technique. I'm not really focused on their upper body as much as I am. We're in a good, clean stance that he can be efficient out of in all 4 ways that he needs to step, okay? And that we're loading, since we're stepping left, that we're loading mental weight in our right foot, okay? And then that when we step, we have very little air time with our feet, okay? You can see those feet are getting in the ground in a hurry, okay? And I apologize, my external hard drive's got to catch up. There it goes, okay? But hey, we are really keeping those feet tight to the ground. There's no air. Those steps are small, okay? But I don't want them dancing in their stance. When you say keep your steps small, we've got to gain ground. We've got to cover ground in the direction that we're going. So every day we work this step drill, and we work through all of our base steps that we take. Okay, so that's a little bit on the step. Now, hey, we're getting into the base. The second fundamental that I think is important to teach, besides how to take an efficient step and what that efficient step looks like, is having a wide base, okay? And when I say a wide base, we want to keep the weight on the inside halves of the foot, okay? That allows us to redirect efficiently. Okay, and I've got a little picture here. Okay, we want to keep, as we move as an offensive lineman, we want to keep the weight on the inside half of that foot. I don't care if you're pass proing. I don't care if you're run blocking. Okay, what this does, not only does it allow you to redirect efficiently. Okay, if I have weight on the middle of that foot and that foot was right there, he would have to take another choppy step right here to get into this position, okay, with the weight on the inside half of the foot in order to redirect. All we're trying to do is play in a manner that we can redirect efficiently at all times without having to take an inefficient second extra step to change direction. I don't care if it's in the run game. I don't care if it's in pass protection. We want the weight on the inside halves of the foot. That also gives me a lot of lateral strength. Okay, if you're playing and the weight is on the inside halves of your foot, and a guy comes and tries to push you from the side, you're able to brace against that because your weight and your knee is inside of that, and I can brace against that pressure. If the weight is on the full foot here, now when he pushes me, it's going to roll over the top of that, and again, I'm going to have to take a false or an inefficient step in order to regain that strength of my platform right there. So we want to, number one, when we talk about base, we want to keep the weight on the inside half of our foot. We want to keep our knees forward, okay? We want to keep our knees forward. We want to play with positive shin angles, okay? And I'm going to let that go right there. Here's a great example. When I say positive shin angles, that knee is out over the toe, okay? We do not want the knee, okay, over the middle of the foot to stacking on top of the hip. We want to push that knee forward, just like in this picture right here, okay, and we call that positive shin angles, okay. He's got great, a lot of people say Z in the knee. There's great Z in the knee right there. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of explosiveness. So weight on the inside halves of the feet, okay, gives you lateral strength and lateral body control. I think Z in the knee or positive shin angles allows for you to uncoil and be explosive out of the joints, okay, and put force into the ground, which creates strength, okay? And excuse me, it rolls through pretty quick. And then the last thing we talk about our base is keeping our feet slightly wider than shoulder width, okay? Which kind of 1 and 3 kind of go hand in hand, okay? But I don't, the reason I say slightly wider is we don't want their feet so wide, even though their weight's on the inside half of their feet. If their feet get so wide, they become weak, they become straight-legged, or they have to take, again, an inefficient step in order to regain the ability to move and to move efficiently. So with the 1 and 3 are very similar, but I think they're different as well, because we don't want to get our base so wide that now I become inefficient in movement, straightening my legs, or having to take a false step in order to regain the ability to move, okay? And just a picture here, okay? Let me get them all down in there. I apologize. Okay. All right. So now I got them all down in there, and you can see we got knees inside of ankles. Okay. Knees inside of ankles. Good full foot in the ground right there. Good full inside half foot of in the ground right there. Okay. Very important. That's how we start this drill. All right. So that you can see our base. Everybody keeps boards in between their feet. But I think if you teach these things, they will help maintain width in the base, okay? And you can see us drive. I'm going to talk about the hips here in just a minute, but what I wanted you to see is us driving the knees forward. Guys, we don't ever talk about moving our feet. We talk about driving our knees to catch up with our hips, and I'm going to talk about the hips and all of that here in just a minute. The point of this is the base. The width of the base slightly wider than shoulder width, okay? You can see that we're staying not super, super wide right here. We're slightly outside of shoulder width, okay? Slightly outside of the width of the board, and we want to stay full foot in the ground, full inside. I don't like this. His heel has come up out of the ground, okay? I want the entire foot in the ground as much as we possibly can. And when I say entire foot, we're talking about the length, the entire length of the foot from the big toe to the heel, but the weight on the inside half of the foot. If you think back in my day, we used to watch ESPN, they would have those lumberjack games, and those guys would climb up the pole and then chop the top. Well, there's a reason their spikes are on the inside half of their boot. That way they can drive those spikes down in the pole as they go up. If ever their weight gets out over the middle of the foot or outside of the foot, there's no spikes out there and they're coming down the pole. So just looking at the base here. Now, and I'm moving quickly. We'll get questions here in just a minute. Hey, and we're going to talk most specifically about run, because I'd love to bleed into the drive block. I may run out of time, but no matter what we do, whether it's run or pass, okay, we're going to try to work our hips unders. Now, I'm going to flip over if I can, okay, and I want to go because this slide was not what I wanted it to be in the video system. So I've got PowerPoint up, and I'm going to talk about this slide in PowerPoint because I think it does a little bit better. But we want aircraft carrier hips. If you can see this plane taking off from an aircraft carrier, you can see the tail end of that plane. It almost looks like it's dipping down, and those hips are going. If you think the tail end of that plane is the hips of your offensive lineman or your football player, whether it's a defender making a tackle, okay, I think these things transcend. They're fundamentals. We're not talking about just a reach block that you would only use if you were an offensive lineman. That's a technique thing. We're talking about a fundamental that transcends all positions, okay? We want those hips to go down and under us, and we want to hit on a rise, okay? And you can see the hips going of that plane going down and under. We want to hit on a rise, but we want a slightly upward trajectory through contact, okay? Conversely, I'm going to show you another picture. Excuse me, I hit the wrong button. Now, this plane, okay, is taking off, and if you look, his hips are going straight up, okay? A lot of times I see on film guys' hips going straight up on contact, and their chest going straight up on contact, not the trajectory that we're trying to work off of. So you'll hear me talk about all the time, aircraft carrier takeoff with our hips. We want those hips to go down and through us, and we want to have a forward but upward trajectory through contact, if that makes sense. We don't want our chest to go straight up. Now, if you think of two things, think of the weight room right here, okay? On the left, the airplane coming off the aircraft carrier, to me, is like we're broad jumping through the block, okay, or through the tackle, okay, whatever you're teaching a guy. The airplane on the right that is lifting straight up, that's more like a power clean. I'm not saying that power cleans are not something you need to be doing in the weight room. That's not what I'm saying. But we don't want a power clean on contact with a defender. We want a broad jump on contact with a defender because that gets our hips underneath us, okay? And then the last thing, if we're in pass, okay, we call it Australian hips because I want those hips down and under us, and I'm not going to dive into that at all today because we're mostly talking about run. Now, let me switch back over to the video here because I couldn't get that animation. So now let's talk about the hips. We want those hips, and then I've got a drill that I'm going to show it tied all together here in just a minute. And I know Coach is going to be getting after me here in about 10 minutes, so I'm trying to push through. But again, all the same things that we talk about: base, okay, inside, weight on the inside halves of our feet. We're not tying in the steps yet. I'm going to tie in the steps here in just a minute, but we're talking about base. I think we're a little bit wide right here, okay? And you can see he slips a little bit, all right? What you've got is now a drill where I've got 600 pounds on 300 pounds, okay? You saw it a minute ago, we only have one defender. This makes them aircraft carrier their hips. They cannot pop straight up like a helicopter or like that plane that lifted straight off the ground. You can see their hips have to go down and through, okay, and through contact, and we want an upward trajectory. Now, you want to play the game low to high. You don't ever want to play the game high to low. Low to high is strong, high to low is weak, okay? So that's what we're teaching here. But we don't want to go low to high right now when we're run blocking, okay? We want to knock them back. We want to strain them back, and we want our hips to roll down and through, not straight up like a power clean, if that makes sense, okay? I'm going to press forward, all right? And then the fourth thing is, hey, our punch, okay? When we talk about our punch, we want our thumbs up, okay, and our elbows under. And I got a couple little illustrations to kind of show you. I look on film and I want our thumb up, okay? I want our elbow underneath our arm. Now, in pass protection, we don't end up playing with extension with the elbow very much, okay? You don't ever want the elbow to extend, in my opinion, to punch in pass protection, okay? But in the run blocking, we do want to try to pry that defender off of us, okay? But we want the thumb up and we want the elbow underneath, okay? You can see the picture right to the side of it. That thumb is turned sideways, so now the elbow starts to turn sideways, and that elbow against pressure will give, okay? This elbow against pressure will actually dig back into the body and create strength. That is a very strong arm, and I call that a pry bar. We want that to be a pry bar on the defender, and it's working through that same trajectory that we just talked about the hips. That thumb being in this position, or fingertips being up, or elbow being outside of the arm, however you look at it, okay, that is a weak position, okay, that will not create strength against pressure. Pressure will actually force that elbow to bend and give, if that makes sense. So we want to strike with our thumbs up or our elbows under, okay, if that makes sense. We want to, and I still teach an arm windup, okay. Now, a lot of guys you'll see, you'll hear clinic, they do not actually teach to bring to drive your elbows slightly back as you go to punch. We still drive our elbows slightly back as we go to punch, okay? And very much like a piston, it's very small, okay? But we're not making contact until our second step lands on the ground anyway. I have found that if we pick our hands straight up and don't drive our elbows slightly back, okay, that forces our chest to come up rather than staying our chest low with pad level, okay? So we take out of our stance, and one of the great coaches that I have an opportunity to learn from, it's an NFL O-line coach, he calls it lock and cock, okay? We're going to lock and cock. So I'm going to slightly cock those elbows back, and I've got a little illustration with this piston right here. We want that piston just real small, okay, up and back, up and back. We're not, I see people on film, if they do try to do it, you start getting width, you start getting eagles wings and that type of stuff. No, it's very tight and very small back and through. Those elbows should be rubbing the body. And then the third thing we talk about when we talk about our punch is we always protect our chest with our hands. I am not a believer in, a lot of people started clapping, okay, and I think they're giving up their chest right away. We're going to protect our chest with our hands. Now, I've got a picture here of, and this is the first thing that we do every day. As the guys come out of the meeting room, they go to this pole and they get 2 sets of 10 pole strikes every day, okay? 2 things. We're looking for aircraft carrier hip trajectory, okay? But I've got this view. I'm going to show you the side view in just a minute, okay? But I've got this view because I want you to see how tight the elbows stay to the body. You can see them slightly cocking back as he goes to shoot or he's coming out of his stance. They slightly cock back, okay? And that's just a timing mechanism that times all of that up, his footwork, his hips, and his strike, that times all that up to be powerful through the punch. And you can see the power, and you can see the hip trajectory from behind. You want their shorts to suck up their butt crack, if that makes sense. They are being so violent with their hip strike, okay? And we're going to talk about how we shoot these hands in just a minute, but I want these hips driving those hands through contact, if that makes sense. That's a pretty picture. You should see no air in between those elbows and the framework of his body as he punches. His thumbs are up, his elbows are underneath his arm, and now if he gets any pressure, it's going to pry right back into the framework of his body, and he's going to be very strong right there. Here's another look at it. This is a drill. We call this a running drive block, okay, where we're now tying in the steps to everything that we just talked about, okay? You can see this backside tackle. This is scooch footwork, okay? That's something that we do that I love, but that's a whole different conversation for another day. But now, want to look at the tight hands, okay? Want to look at us tying footwork. So you should see second steps getting in the ground, no air, okay, or very little air, okay? On contact, you should see us strike with elbows under arms or thumbs up. You should see our hips on aircraft coming off an aircraft carrier, not lifting straight up. My film is kind of messing up on me. I apologize. Here we go. It's not the film, it's the operator. Okay. Now, here is hips that you don't want. I am shooting my hips, but they are going straight up. Okay. That's what we don't want. We want hips that go out. So here's a drill. We just call it running drive. Okay. I want to get the feel of them punching and timing all of that up, keeping their feet. This is very easy for a guy to get really long with his footwork, okay, and not play with tight feet. And we really press our guys to run off the football, run. We're not just baby stepping. Again, you don't hear me talk about steps. You hear as far as when we're driving, you hear me talk about step, driving our feet. Okay. We want to drive our knees. I want our guys driving our knees, which is keeping us positive shin angles. Okay. But a lot of great trajectory through contact. We are playing low to high. And then, of course, we will finish. Our base stays wide. Okay. The weight's trying to stay on the inside halves of the feet. And we always finish with a last shove on the echo of the whistle. Okay. So that was the strikes. Now, the last thing are eyes through the landmark of the defender. Okay. Guys, give your guys only a few detailed landmarks for all of the blocks. Try to marry that down into just very, very few landmarks. If you give them too many things to think about, they're not going to be able to be effective and efficient in landing those landmarks. You can see here, I got Mr. Cool Dude with a big chest, okay? Hey, there's a sternum landmark, there's an armpit landmark, there's a V of the neck landmark. Now, we have a few other landmarks, but those are the three basic landmarks that we use, okay? And guys are really able to buy into that. Coach, is it a sternum landmark? Coach, is it a V of the neck landmark? Coach, is it an armpit landmark? Okay, and there's not too many of them. And that way you can tie their fundamentals into it, okay? All right. Now, the next thing, 3 points of contact. And you can see I have the eyes come up first, okay? You're going to make contact with your eyes and your hands at the same time. But I always emphasize, no matter what, if you make contact with and an opportunity to stay simultaneously, but I always focus on the eyes first because I want them to be safe. Okay. So 3 points of contact, and then we want to drive our eyes and our hands with our hips. Okay. Now I'm the same dude that we just looked at from behind, but now here it is from the side. I want to drive my eyes and my hands to contact with my hips. Again, elbows underneath, all those things we talked about, hip trajectory, we're aircraft carrier hip trajectory, all of those things that we talked about. But what I want you to see here is, and we're not actually getting eyes to contact right here because I don't want them hitting this with no helmet on, if that makes sense, and this will not move. Okay, we get to that, but he is driving the eyes and the hands to contact, but he's driving it with his hips. I think that is very, very important. Okay. Now, just want to show you, and I know I'm running tight on time. Okay. I'm going to kind of fast forward. I'm not going to be able to get into the drive block. Okay. But what I want to do is we stress running off the ball. So this is how we start every day. But again, fundamentally, I think you'll see, hey, weight on the inside halves of the feet. I think you'll see us playing with feet tight to the ground. We're protecting our chest with our hands. Our elbows should be tight to the framework of our body, okay? And I try to do things that hey, that's what I'm coaching here. And I really stress two things here. I stress keeping our feet tight to the ground, and I stress keeping our chest protected when we work that drill, okay? Now, hey, look at our left guard here, okay? We're talking about drive block, but we're talking about building all things together fundamentally. And I want you to see, no matter where we're talking about him, okay? Now, we're using different footwork right here on this drive block because we think that we're possibly getting a twist. We get so much movement to try to stop our inside zone game. Okay. Now, hey, we're using Scoot's footwork right here. Excuse me. But once contact happens, all of those fundamentals that we talked about apply to all three of these guys. Now, my center's stepping on my guard right here, so you're going to see him trip and have a tough time. But feet tight to the ground, weight on the inside halves of our foot. Okay, we're leaking a little bit with our head right here. I would rather our head be a little bit more lateral right there. Okay, but no matter what we're doing, hey, this tight end right here, those fundamentals we just talked about. Okay, he's going from a narrow platform to a wide platform to contact. Now, he's fitting a specific landmark right here. He's not fitting the sternum of the guy, but all of those fundamentals that we talk about blocking, about tackling, okay, all of those things apply, and I think they carry over to no matter what you do. Watch our right guard here. We're drive blocking, okay? But you can see tight feet, small, no air. Our center, small, no air, okay? All right, now I want you to see what happens. Our left guard here, look at all of the air with his left foot. Now he's going to trip and fall because he loses fundamentals, okay, or what we're asking him to do. All right, movement is easy to handle when fundamentally you're doing the right things. But I love this right here by the left guard. I love this by the center, how tight our feet are to the ground. Okay, some really good stuff right there. Now, some NFL guys doing it. Okay, in fact, this is that picture that I took. I took a still shot of this picture right here. Okay, but they're just blocking inside zone, but feet tight to the ground. Okay, all right. Low to high trajectory through contact. Okay, all of those things we talk about. Inside hand strikes, thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up, elbows under the arm. All of those things that we talk about as we've gone through. Now, I think we're talking about the right guard here. I just got this in here so you can really see the strike with the hands. Okay, you can really see the thumb up. You can really see the elbow underneath him. And man, there's a lot of strength in that right there. A lot of strength in that. Okay, and even if you're playing against a great dude that compresses you back, your elbows get tied back into the framework of your body, and you're not going to get knocked back, whether we're talking about pass pro, whether we're talking about run blocking. Okay, the right guard from the Colts this year. Okay, and this film's a little bit jumpy. Let me see if I can get it to where it doesn't, that one jumps. I apologize. Let's see if we can get the left guard right here. No air, no air. Get the feet in the ground, no air. All across the board, no air. Get the feet in the ground, okay? Play on a low to high trajectory. Strikes, elbow under the arms, okay? So many great things, again, that can transcend no matter the position group, no matter the age, and no matter the offense that you're running. That's why I wanted to go through this today. We were going to dive into the drive block. I know Coach is going to jump in here on me in a second. We were going to dive into the drive block, but I thought it was more important to hammer this because, hey, it really, hey, watch how tight the feet are right here.
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
High trajectory. Hey, Coach.
You're good, buddy. Keep going, man. You're doing fine.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, you're good right now. We're waiting on the other coaches to come into the meeting, so I'm sure guys are enjoying watching, and what you're talking about is great.
Hey, any questions, anything that as I'm kind
of we did. We had a question, and it was it says, Coach, when you teach the steps, do you teach the lineman to be in 2-point or 3-point stance when you're first starting with the concept of what you're talking about?
Great question. First off, all of our guys know that we work out of 2 points as well as 3 points, just because that's who we are offensively. There are some times that we run the football and everybody but the center's in a 2 point. So I begin drill work a lot of times out of 2 point because I think it's harder, especially run drill wise. I think it's harder to run block out of a 2 point stance. So we will begin out of a 2 point. Our guards spend most of their time in 3 point though. Okay. So during pre-practice and stuff like that, I do all of our drill work from a 2 point. Then once we get into practice, once the whistle actually blows, you'll see the guys in the chutes now down in 3 points. So you'll see some 2 point, you'll see some 3 point. That's because kind of who we are. And I think it's much more difficult to teach a guy to run off the football if he's a 2 point stance. And we can, Coach, we can take 2 more hours on just the
sure.
But when we get in a 3 point stance, really, we've got very minimal weight on our hand. So really, it's just a 2 point stance with our hand down. I just think it creates a little bit of a mindset. And then, it depends, honestly, early in my coaching career, I tried to force everybody into what I wanted. And what I've learned is that we had a right tackle last year that he struggled playing out of a 3 point stance. Well, 15 years ago, I would have made him play in a 3 point stance. He probably would have been a backup for us because he just struggled. He had a hard time. His body, the way his body was built and made, when he got down in a 3 point stance, he really struggled coming out of that and moving. So fundamentally, he was a nightmare. When I put him in a 2 point stance, all of a sudden, a lot of those things just went away.
Right.
I let him play in a 2 point stance
Sure.
down of every ball game. The big thing to me is that we don't give away run pass with what we're doing.
Right.
You could never look at his stance and say, well, they're throwing the football because he's in a 2 point stance, because he was in a 2 point stance every snap of every game.
Right. Absolutely.
I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but
no, it's not. I mean, I know that there's so much that goes into, especially when you're dealing with different style of athletes and you're talking about fundamentals and especially with the offensive line position to begin with. I mean, there's so many things that are happening that if you can minimize what is happening for them from a mental part, then you've allowed them to play faster. And I think that's what you're really talking about, is giving them the chance to play faster.
Yeah. And 15 years ago, I wouldn't have done that.
Sure. Yeah.
I really tried to push him to learn how to play out of a 3 point stance because I truly like guys to be in a 3 point stance. Now, we've gotten such that our tackles most of the time are in 2 point stances because we need to see secondary contours and that type of stuff. So it's far easier for those guys to see things, to see overhang pressures, to see blitzes, to see safety rotations. It's far easier for them to see those things when they're up in a 2 point stance versus being in a 3 point stance. I would say our guards probably 90% are in 3 point stances, but we do some run game out of a 2 point stance as well. So we work both.
I love the principle that you were talking about, and a lot. I think I'm going to just do it kind of the side. You could tell me, but essentially, we're talking about just here. That's it. We're not even really. We're not talking about like like I know with a lot of guys, they times they're swinging. When we're telling these guys, we're just saying, hey man, just go back just a little bit and get your elbows inside of your frame to be able to come out and attack with it.
Yes. And I think it ties together their footwork. It's a timing mechanism as well. And if they don't do it, their head starts leaking forward too early. And now when the head starts leaking forward, the legs start straightening and I can't keep seeing my knee.
Correct. Right.
It all ties into me.
Yeah. for everyone that's watching it, they're talking about the idea of that knee rolling forward as you were talking about the concept of you're teaching them to run. And the idea is to let that knee kind of cascade itself forward to allow it the ability to kind of move into the block.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, hey, if we were power stepping right now, then
Right.
go right now because
Right.
it is mirroring what our foot does. But like you said, Coach, as we start moving forward, and we are a very vertical football team,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all on our second step that we're going vertical, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And it's because of zone. But to me, whether you go vertical on your first step or your second step, all of these fundamentals and principles apply. And we talk about positive shin angles, getting the knee out over the toes. And that's why I said, hey, we don't talk about moving our feet. You'll never hear me, hey, move your feet. Because, Coach, I can stand up against this wall right behind me right here, get down in an unbelievable football position, demeanor, and I can move my feet so fast.
Right.
And I'm never training to move the wall. A guy can look on film and he's moving his feet, but he ain't going nowhere.
Right.
We strain to drive our knees forward because that continually, like you said, it continually rolls over that knee, that positive shin angle, okay, that's the knee, however you want to say it, but it keeps creating power for a guy.
Yeah, definitely. Coach Alan Rudolph, for those of you who are tuning in and seeing Coach Rudolph with Ohio University, spent some time coaching in the Canadian League, and we got a chance to meet up. Coach, this is awesome. I'm waiting to see if any more questions come through. But I will say that the two drills, as simple as they were, it made my mouth kind of dropped open. I was looking, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense, where you added the extra guy behind the guy who's holding the pad and make that player responsible for moving more that he has to over accentuate. I think that's a really good concept.
And how many times, Coach, do you work a drive block or do you work whatever block and on contact against a good a good defensive lineman, there's a stalemate.
Absolutely.
And I'm just creating that stalemate, and they have to learn to work through that stalemate with their hips and driving their knees forward. Now, the first guy really is just a 300-pound dummy.
Right.
He's not trying. He's just heaviness, if that makes sense.
Yes, perfect.
The guy grabs the back of the shoulder pads, and I tell them to apply some pressure, but I want the guy to feel himself working through the heaviness and the stalemate. So I don't want it to be, hey, 600 pounds, we ain't just letting that 300, we're not letting the guy move. That's not the purpose of the drill. But them to feel the hip trajectory coming out of their hips, getting their hips through, and then having their knees forward. And then, like we talked about, Coach, that strike. Now, we're not actually striking in a drill because it fit, but I want them to pry and create. Coach Mudd used to talk about all the time, Howard Mudd, blocking with extension in the run game. We want to block with extension, and extension doesn't need to go vertically. Extension needs to go out.
It's an outlet. Right?
It's a broad jump, not a power clean.
Absolutely. I think we hear all this stuff about power cleaning, and again, I'm a huge guy who loves the idea of incorporating them. And you're getting hips automatically, but I agree with you. I think the angle of trajectory, especially for the O-line, has got to be different.
And we are power cleaning.
Absolutely.
We're just doing it on this trajectory rather than that trajectory. And I think power clean is so vitally important to offensive line play, to any position.
Absolutely.
Explode out of their hips. But the angle that we're exploding out of our hips is different than what we're doing in the weight room.
Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt.
I just think it ties to my guys, in their.
Hey, Coach, can you let everybody know what your Twitter account is? Because that's how, what people don't know is just how vital kind of this, especially with COVID and everything. Man, we were talking through there, and boom, next thing you know, we've got this. And I'm very grateful to have you on.
Can you see it right there, Coach?
Yeah, there it is, Coach. Good deal. Yep, it's right there.
Hey, it's just and guys, hey, I'd love everybody to come to Ohio, but this ain't a recruiting spill.
Sure.
And I think I would love everybody if they get an opportunity to go follow that Twitter page. And that Twitter page is not for recruiting. That Twitter page is for line play. And
yep.
I put out something today actually on that Twitter page. A guy that I coach with Hamilton, with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I don't know. There I am. I'm back. So I put out there on today. I call it lunch lanyap, and I do about four of those a week. Different little knickknacks here and there. Different fundamental things: run game, pass pro, whatever, and a couple bullet points that the guys I think have really liked.
Yeah.
So I try to put that, out 3 or 4 or 5 times a week. And then there are some other things that go along with that, but now's not the time and place.
No doubt. Well, Coach, man, I'm just forever, again, we'll get to talk. I'll follow up with you, and I appreciate you being here for everybody today. And we're gonna get our next group on. And again, this has been a really great experience so far. So thanks so much.
Hey, and Coach, just, and I know I'm pushing into somebody else's time. If they will just DM me, I love talking football. If they'll just DM me on that Twitter page, hey, I'll end up I'll tell everything I know.
You'll be talking football the rest of the night, just like the rest.
That's all right. I love it.
All right, sounds good, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you for having me. Thank you, guys.